Yeah.
Yes, children, I always recommend children. Bike right is straight.
So,
Look, absolutely straight north. So that you will see. So this one sings beautifully. That's why it is also called the Indian nightingale. But if it doesn't want to, then it doesn't sing and it makes a ridiculous noise like that. So one can't imagine that the same bird is making these two noises, but it does. Very moody birds. Very moody birds. The other thing that we will keep observing are the butterflies. Very important to have this. Right? This is the season for it to be dry, and this is that's what they make it be. And that's when you used to come many years back, it used to really not, it used to be an overgrown place where people used to avoid. Sir is actually responsible for making it what it is today.
It used to,
Yes.
in 60s also it used to have lawns and clean family engagements, and coming in the daytimes also, in the morning. Now it's one of the best places, and now it has so much revived that Modi ji came, with the Japanese Prime Minister to that Bal Bodhi tree, and now there are a lot of plans from the PMO to make it a garden of spiritual wisdom. So things are, going for a complete makeover now. So, but again, in the daytime, there is no family activities, no families are coming. So, in the no families and no children, and when that nuisance is no more there. But such a beautiful 100 acres of forest area. This is the only forest area in whole of the Delhi where you can enter forest without the permission of forest. Otherwise, you cannot enter forest.
What about those Sanjay Van and all those places?
Sanjay Van, I am not very much sure, but there is. That's. I'm not pretty much sure, but
City forest. It's a city forest.
it must be city forest, but it is protected rich forest.
You must go there.
Sobabul. So Sobabul, as you can, one of them actually walked away. Cheese. So this one is taken over the place. So it's kind of what could be the problem if it is taking over this space? What could be the problem then to the ecology?
no shade for the others.
No place, like if it's taking up all the resources, and how will the other trees grow, right? So that is a problem with invasive. This one is pretty low maintenance, because as you can see the leaves are like sparse, so it really doesn't need much water, etc. And it does act as fodder for goats, for cattle. So there is some use of the tree. So it's not a very dangerous, unlike Kikar, which is dangerous, and we'll talk about it when we see it. But this one is not that dangerous, and it proliferates like anything.
But these are the seeds.
So I'll talk a few minutes about this park. Many people here, sirs, mentioned that you have been to this park for decades before, right? 40 was the oldest I heard. Has anyone been here before 40 years?
70 in the 70s.
In the 70s, means almost 50 years.
I've been in the 60s and late 60s.
Late 60s.
Sorry, early 60s.
Early 60s.
59 to 63.
Wow.
So have I. I've also been here in the early 60s and the late 50s.
When I visited for the first time, I used to study in Cambridge School.
You were in school?
The
But
spectrum is complete.
complete.
7.
7. So this park was like dedicated as Buddha Jayanti Park in 65. So many of you have come here
It was just a
after.
jungle, the ridge. When I was,
It was before that must have been a jungle.
Around and
But in 1965, means almost 60 years before, Lal Bahadur Shastri ji dedicated it, and the occasion, right, purportedly was 2,500 years of Buddha's enlightenment. So that's why it's called Buddha Jayanti, and whenever he got enlightened is when the Buddha Jayanti is there. This has become a focal point for it. We'll talk about it when we reach the Bodhi tree, as some of you talked about it. There is one Bodhi tree here. But this is a park. The diversity of trees you see here is not an accident, right? It is done consciously by the Delhi MCD and people before that, right? All these trees that you will see down here are not natural, like the bougainvillea is not natural. The bougainvillea came to us with, all sorts of foreign visitors, like a lot of vegetation moves, right? This was French, as she guessed correctly. In the 14th and the 15th and the 16th century, Europeans sent voyagers all over the world, primarily looking for India, right? A trade route to India, because the Middle East had like a chokehold, and they were charging exorbitant rate for all the spices coming from India. So they sent out, and then later on there was just voyages of discovery as well. So this was a French fleet that was there. And with those fleets travelled botanists, zoologists. Charles Darwin travelled on one such British expedition. But this was discovered by a French fleet in Latin America, and it was named after the admiral leading that fleet. Interestingly, one of our walkers was a naval person, and he shared this trivia with us, and that's why it's called Bougainvillea. And then, of course, they took all these species all over the world. We'll see some of these interesting species going ahead. But that's the story of Bougainvillea. It thrives in Delhi, right? Obviously, almost everywhere in India. You put it and
What was it called before it was Crescent Wood Jayanti?
it was just the ridge. There was nothing.
But they are from here, so there is no problem. The reason why I'm getting so distracted is because this tree behind, maybe we'll go under it and stand. But this is fine. This is good. Again, when I say good for the ecology, what could it possibly mean? What good can a tree do? What are some of the good things that a tree can do?
Retain moisture, I guess, and
Provide shade.
Provide shade, retain moisture. So in providing shade, what ends up happening is we might end up thinking, so the providing shade part is a tricky one. What happens is that because we are in a very dry place, right, it is sometimes difficult to have very broad-leafed plants. Just behind we crossed one which is called Kanak Champa, very broad leaves. It was there. If we come across it again, I will show you. So there, but is that, should we keep, or sal or teak, they have broad leaves, but should we keep growing those, because sometimes they don't do very well in very harsh climate. So we need these, which is not broad leaf. It may sometimes it's completely bare. The last time we came, this whole Babul roof was bare, so there was no shade. But that's what a place like this needs. If you're going to go by the moisture retention and keeping the soil alive, then we will also need this kind of tree, especially in a dry place like ours. So that is the thing. But yes, it should give us, it should take care of this. Let's go by the soil part. If we talk about the soil and moisture part, this is a very interesting plant here. Lots of us even grow them in our own gardens. Any idea what this is called? Canna, right? And do you know what it does to the soil? It's actually a water purifier. So in many marshy lands, in many, even if you go to the Hoskas Lake, they've used the canna plant to actually clear up that water. Rather than using a chemical method, this is a very, very commonly used plant to clean certain toxins from water. So canna is actually very good. As we stand here, we can hear a bird.
is this indigenous to
And observe, you will see some bee, you will see some insect. So a plant which is from that region will support life, right? It will support life. It will have insects and all this. See, look at this leaf. This shows what a good tree this is. Just look at this leaf. It's all perforated with insects, right? Here. Yeah. So next time you see a plant which has perforations, you know it's a good plant.
Oh,
Yes, because it has been eaten by insects of that region. Do you know how much of our species we have lost in the last 50 years because of us, because of human behavior? How much? 50. 69% of species on this planet have been wiped out by one species, which is humans, in the last 50 years. The number is higher in water bodies, right? Now that is because of shipping, etc. He's a shipping.
That is inhuman.
Huh?
The
What?
act. by
The act is human. So only humans behave in the
inhuman.
Yeah, I wish we would behave. No, inhuman acts are actually very kind. It's human acts which are very, very violent. So, so one wonders that where are these species? We've wiped out 69%. That is like more than 2/3. So, which species are these? Abhi to kutte, billi to sab dikh rahe hain. These species are the small microorganisms which are very, very critical for our survival, and most of those are these. And the more we remove trees which are natural to a space, we remove species. The second largest threat to species is invasive trees. Right? So we have to be very careful when we're planting in our gardens. Or
Really what you say,
Yeah.
because quite obviously much of the indigenous vegetation, even the trees, have been removed to create
Yeah.
this fancy park. So it's
That's
a
all.
contradiction in terms.
It is. So I keep trying to have a conversation on that. Some of them are still very native. So like we saw the babool. Let's have a look at this tree. Look at the leaves. Oh, by the way, look at what's happening to the red leaf over there. Can you see? So now we know it's a good tree, right?
Yes.
And we can see that. We can actually see a lot of the insects hovering around there. But have a look at how beautiful the new leaves are.
Yeah.
It from a distance, it actually looks like it is like a flower, right? So that gives the name to this tree.
What is it?
Think of a name, a Hindi name for flower. Thing that will tell you it's from this region is the name itself, Kusum, right? You will. Other thing is you will see what will you see? Bees, insects, various things. Like you'll see leaves that have been eaten, right? You'll see all of that. The third thing is you will see reference of it in our culture. It could be connected to a festival. It could be in our books. So Kusum actually finds its mention in the Mahabharata. So lots of trees find their mention in our epics. One, it says that when that castle was made, which was made of wax, lark. Exactly, lark. So that insect which creates a lark feeds off this tree. So it's a pretty, well, to be very fair, it's a pretty negative connection to the Mahabharata, because that then finally burns down all that. So there's a insect which eats this tree or lives off this tree, which is the lark insect. So that's why the connection.
This tree is an isolated one. Generally, they say for the health of the trees, there should be, a group of them. Else they just wither.
It's actually very good. We have only one
examine.
day it's a problem actually. Like
And
the
then
one day.
all those
Because it
parcels
has
had to be
clearly been
sealed,
planted,
sealed
right?
with this.
This whole row
And with
here,
the official
where
stamp.
Yes,
these
yes.
trees normally? Let's do that.
Mulberry bush.
Mulberry bush, yes. And you will see there are different shapes of it. Look at this one, it's not eaten, the shape is only different. Look at the next one. Right? Each leaf is a different shape. How interesting. Look at this, this is not eaten, it's just like that. How unique. Correct? Yes, what is the funny? So, I am always in a teacher mode. So this is how it is. So this is the mulberry tree. It would have just finished fruiting. It should be fruiting. I don't know why it's.
That's what I am also thinking.
Yeah, it should be fruiting. It will not fruit. There will not no pollen. And you can see the fruit, right? If anybody can find me a ripe fruit, I will show you a very fantastic and fabulous thing. I think which tree
Not
is
the
this?
season.
That boss will only and only use that tree, because unlike humans, first and foremost, animals are very, very seasonal and local. They like seasonal and local. So they only and only go to every village has a this cooler. Anybody from Uttar Pradesh, nobody from UP. Okay, because in UP there is a these become nice and big and orange, and then they're full of, they look like a fig. But that is probably a disease. It's fine. They will cure it.
That's what I read in antibodies for these.
Yes.
Whereas
they can.
if they're in isolation, then they can't, and then they get more susceptible. Otherwise, they communicate with each other through the
They
roots
do.
and all that.
They do. So there's a
Yes.
whole fungi network which is.
Yes,
which is
yes,
there.
that's what they
Yeah.
say. Yes.
So there is, but it doesn't mean that they have to be the same kind of tree. They can
Uh-huh.
be different kind. They'll still protect each other.
They can communicate.
They can communicate. In fact, the communication network is the mushroom network.
Yes.
Right. So that is anyway a different thing. But as long as they are not completely alone.
Oh yeah, I want to
Amaltai, good girl. Yes. So now tell us the cultural and historic significance of this tree. Do you is it from this region?
Yes.
How do you know?
Because it has small leaves.
What's important? Even its English name is Indian, like it says Indian Labrador. It's not just Labrador, Indian Labrador. Okay. So what else? What else? How do you know this is from? There are certain things we mentioned. One, what are the things we know which may help us understand that a tree is from here?
Rise no matter what.
Huh?
Rise no matter what.
It's exactly. What else?
It has a lot of birds and bees.
Lot of girls. All
this is happening here.
All of them have come just to scream at us. What else?
Music festivals.
Huh? News and festivals. Thank you for giving me the cue. So which festival is this used in?
Vishu.
Vishu! So only one person from Kerala?
Actually, I think this is not that flat. It's Cassia festival.
This is Cassia Festival.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's not coming down. You can see those bunches, and that will make you realize that this is that. Yeah. So this is Cassia fistula. The reason for calling it fistula. Fistula because of those long pipes. Fistula is also associated with the disease, and it's this long pods it has. Can you see those pods, Andy? The pods. Yeah. So monkey. So
That's what I'm gonna seed them.
huh? They have seeds
what
in it.
seeds,
Great rattle. If they were children, I keep giving them this for as rattle. Monkeys love it. It's also called monkey pot tree. This is Cassia fistula, amaltash, used during Vishu. When does Vishu happen? Any idea? Yeah, so just a little before this, now connecting it to my subject, which is climate change. So this is the state tree of Kerala, right? And this is this blooms with during, so that's a connection with festivals and rituals, etc. So this flower blooms, it's Vishu. Because of climate change and because of random changes in seasons, this doesn't always bloom anymore during that time. So in Kerala during Vishu now they import amaltash flowers from Thailand. So Thailand. So this is the royal flower of Thailand. So amaltash is grown extensively. Where, as I said, there is the whole region wherever there is a similar climate or similar soil system, the tree will flourish. So it does very, very well in this whole space of India, Thailand, Burma, Laos, all of that. So it's a royal flower of Thailand. So amaltash, Indian laburnum, extensively used as a medicine, but that's true for most trees. Tree behind it.
Another thing is,
The beautiful white flowers. Your grandmom's name was Bakun. This is Bakun. You don't know your grandmother's name.
Insects photosynthesizing.
They might be cold-blooded.
Yeah. So basically, all these insects are cold-blooded. So sun gives them more energy, metabolism becomes easier. When they're flying, they need to have an elevated rate of metabolism so that the energy is converted. Sun helps it. So typically, once the sunrise happens, you'll see lots of butterflies suddenly. Before that, they'll be sitting. If you walk through that, they'll be like struggling and getting out of your way. But once it's up, it's like all over the place.
And the flower which is
MP Park. The Prime Minister of Sri Lanka came and donated a small Bodhi tree sapling, right? And Bodhi tree, as many of you may be aware, is linked to Buddhism. Any idea why it is linked? What is?
Because
Everyone knows. He was sitting under a Bodhi tree. It is called the Mahabodhi tree in Bodh Gaya, where he got it. Buddha, as you all may know, Buddhism is one of the top 4 religions in the world, right? So the largest being Christianity, almost 33%, Islam 25%, followed by Hinduism, about 15%, and then we have Buddhism, about 6 to 7%, right? So a large part of the world is Buddhist, and it's the last two, both Hinduism and Buddhism, started in India, deeply interlinked, very interlinked with our history also, right? So all our history almost starts with Buddhism. And what do you mean by history? What was there before it? There were lots of civilization. We have the whole Indus Valley civilization, everything, but it's called proto-history. So the difference between history and proto-history is, in history you should have all sorts of records. It should have some documentation. People have been writing about everything. It should be deciphered. You haven't deciphered the Indus Valley script. So since Buddhism, there's a lot of writing that has been there. It almost, about 50 to 100 years plus minus the Maurya Empire. So even the Janapadas that were before that, there is documentation about it. So we know that is history. So it almost coincides with what is our history, right? Which is documented. Before that, lots of stuff called proto-history. But yeah, Buddha came. It's a big milestone in our society, in our history. He was born in Lumbini, which is now in Nepal, but all that area was sort of unified. And in the 6th century BC to 5th century BC, so he was born in 583 BC, was alive till 483. So from that perspective, a very long life. And he was obviously born in a royal family. His name was Siddhartha Gautama, right? Gautama was his clan. His name was Siddhartha. That was his name. He was named Buddha much after he passed away, right? So Buddha, by definition,
That was after the Enlightenment, Buddha.
So the name was given to him later by his followers. When he was alive, he was called Sakyamuni.
Yeah.
And it's still called that name in Far Asia. If you go to Far East, Japan and all, that's what he's called there. because the clan he came from, right? The Gautamas were from the Sakya clan, so it was called Muni means Muni, Sakya Muni. So that was the name that was also during his lifetime. He was most probably called that along with other names, but his followers gave him the name Buddha because Buddha means enlightenment or awakening, and they said he sort of dispelled ignorance and the knowledge, and the enlightenment came. So he was called Buddha, and it was a radical religion at the time it came into being. To understand the context that it was there, we were let's say what is ritualistic Hinduism, what we have today, right? We had the Brahmins and everyone else. So it was almost like an antithesis of that, a rebellion against the established religion of the time, because there was all sorts of stratification, mostly based on the type of work you did. But he came with the concept of completely doing away with rituals, right? He came up with his eightfold path, 4 values. But his point was, it was the middle path, right? He said you don't need to follow rituals. You can yourself reach God and enlightenment, right? And nirvana.
He did not believe in God.
Means his method that he proposed, right, was completely you yourself get connected to the Almighty, right? Get awakened yourself. So his point was, he said you don't need like a priest or an intermediary to reach God.
No, I think Buddhism was basically an atheism.
At that time, that's why I said it was a rebellism, right? So it did not follow the established religion of the time. It was, as you said, it was at that time. You're right. It could be called atheism.
But even today, that's what they say.
Yeah.
Buddhism has no concept of God.
Yeah.
I believe
No
that
concept
the
of God, no
questions
rebirth.
that he faced was, why do you grow old?
That was one of the first values, like the 4 values that is there, is that there will always be sadness, struggle.
Yeah.
You know,
And why
that
do
will
you
be
die?
there. Huh?
And why?
Why? Because that's the trigger, right? Apparently, he saw a dead body being
That's
taken,
where, yeah.
and that triggered his thinking, and that's how the journey started for Buddha. But yeah, he proposed it. It became a huge religion in India, right? Really, really large following, largely because of the symbology that you see here, right? So the Maurya Empire was started almost about 50 to 100 years after him by Chandragupta Maurya, and Ashoka was one of their biggest kings. And he sort of became, after, the story is, right, that after the Kalinga war, he was saddened by seeing all the misery and the struggle, and he converted to Buddhism. He then, sort of promulgated the Dhamma, as he called it. And at that point in time, it became like highly supported by the state. That helped, really spread it. His edict talked about it. He did not specifically push the religion, right? His point was follow the values, do good, don't do bad stuff, things like that. So it was more a social message that he spread it as. But he sponsored all the things, right? He set up the Sachi Stupa, he got all the Buddhist relics, put it in one place, sponsored that, sponsored variety of viharas that were there. His own daughter, right? Sanghamitra. She became a Buddhist nun, and it's linked to this tree, right? So Sanghamitra took the sapling of the Mahabodhi tree, which was there at Bodh Gaya, and took it to Sri Lanka, and it was planted there. This tree is actually a sapling that came out of that tree. So,
How did this tree help the enlightenment? It could have been any tree.
as Jaiti would say very often, she says, if you sit with any tree, you will get enlightened. Because
Well said.
they're noble
Well said.
beings, right? They
Yeah.
only
Yes.
give. So,
Just
so from that
incidental,
perspective,
it's incidental.
yeah, means
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it happened that he was with the the Bodhi trees under which he got enlightened, right? That place is very well documented.
Yes,
Ashoka made a proper throne for him exactly where the tree which he was leaning against. That tree incidentally died, right? The Mahabodhi tree which is there at Bodh Gaya today is a replantation bought back from Sri Lanka. So the Sri Lankan Mahabodhi tree which is there now, right, is actually recorded as the oldest human planted tree still in living. So it's 2300 years old, 2300 years old. So there may be other trees which human planted, but there is no recorded history because this was planted in a king's garden. All the kings sort of took care of it, and it's like in a shielded, protected area, and there were prayers and Buddhists are there in Sri Lanka who have taken care of it for thousands of years, right? So that is the oldest recorded human tree. And there are obviously these redwood trees and all sorts of other trees which have been there longer, but that is like human plantation. And that is also closest related living being to the Buddha, right? Because it's still living and it just came off the tree that
Which tree is this?
it's the Bodhi tree only, same
No,
tree.
but scientifically.
Banyan.
People
No,
tree.
people.
People tree.
People.
So that is the species if you're asking, right?
Yes, yes.
So what is it called?
Ficus religiosa. People ka पेड़.
People, Ficus religiosa. So because all sorts of religious things happen there, when the British came, they named it like that. They call it Ficus religiosa. So it's ficus is all the other ficuses you saw. This is religiosa because people are always praying underneath it. So when they came, they must have seen it. So they named it like that. You have a lot of these things, right? There is Bengalis in it where because the British first came there, they named it after Bengal. A lot of things have indica, like mango is called Mangifera indica because they found mangoes first in India. So that way, there's a lot of scientific naming that has happened because of what the botanists saw happening. So that is an interesting social history of the tree because that's what got it named what it is named today. So okay, so the Bodhi tree, as I was saying, right, is still a symbol of enlightenment. A lot of people pray to it, and this itself is a descendant of the original Bodhi tree. So the current Bodh Gaya tree, our government, or a few hundred years back, we got it back from Sri Lanka and replanted it in Bodh Gaya. So it's still related to the same tree, but it had to be got back from Sri Lanka because that is where it survived. So yeah. So this place during Buddha Jayanti, there is a huge gathering there, and this is where it's celebrated, like the focal point of Buddha Jayanti in Delhi, NCR. So this is what it is. We can.
So to cover the gate. So that's called a Torana, and it's basically just a gate to like show you're stepping into the sacred realm. So it's there in front of all the stupas and Chaitagrahas. It's a gate, and it changes. So the symbols on it usually differ from place to place, and like a lot of them, like the ones I studied had animals on them. Like there were elephants or lions to show strength and all. But this one, for example, doesn't have any animals made up. It does have the Dharam Chakra, which is to show the eightfold path to enlightenment. So that's probably because it's guarding the tree, and it faces. So it depends it symbolizes which side it's facing. So this one should be facing south because south is enlightenment, and like east is the side is where Buddha was born. Or
East is what?
East is the direction in which Buddha was born. And north is towards Nirvana, and west is towards where his first sermon was. So yeah, that's it.
This is like
During Buddha's time and hundreds of years after that, Buddha was never depicted in human form, and he was always depicted as symbols, whether it is the Bodhi tree, whether it is the chakra as she was talking, which unlike our Ashoka chakra, which is again interestingly, none of the Buddhist monuments have the Ashoka emblem on it. This one they have put it here, which also we can decode, but
Signifies Delhi.
yeah, it's a national emblem, so it's been put here. We have adopted the Ashoka emblem, right? So that is what it is. In the Sachi Stupa, each direction has a different thing on top. None of them are the Ashoka thing. They have the chakra she was talking about, which has 8 spokes instead of 24. So the 24 is Ashoka's 24 hours progress concept, but the Buddhist chakra has 8 things which are for the eightfold path that Buddha suggested. Then different Torana had different. Only one Toran which has that thing is still survives. Others have actually broken now, so it's not surviving as is. But rest of them have Jataka tales, how he was born, what he did, various animals involved. And animal motif is another very common motif in Buddhist, wherever you see carvings. Because the first time apparently Buddha preached, there were only 2 deers there. So they always have deers in the carvings where they have about Buddha. Then there's elephant, which talks about loyalty, wisdom. That's a very common motif in a lot of Buddhist architecture. Yeah, I think that's some of the things.
Toran is also associated with worship. something is put together with wooden sticks kind of thing, creates this without the lion.
The lion is. This is the only Orthona which I have seen the national emblem on.
Without the lion.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that is actually from Sarnath, no?
Which
The
one?
Ashoka emblem
Yeah.
was found in
Sarnath.
Sarnath.
Yes, could be.
And
It is still there.
It is still there, and
the
it
museum.
was made by Ashoka only.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So Ashoka made lot of these pillars. So one of the ways, so the interesting thing, right, is about the story about Ashoka, right? One of the reason Buddhism got popular is Ashoka, but Buddhism stayed and Ashoka was forgotten. Literally, there were no records of Ashoka till the late 19th century. So towards 1880, 1890, when the Asiatic Society was set up, a lot of these edicts were written here and there. People didn't know what they were. A lot of Ashoka edicts, about 35 to 40 edicts have been found. Incidentally, the oldest, sort of human this thing in Delhi is an Ashoka edict, historical edict. Those of you who have gone to east of Kailash, something called as Kailash Hills there on top of a rock, they were blasting it to make some things there. Then they found out there is an edict here. So they did not damage it. So that only one rock is there, you have to climb on top of the rock. Now they made a nice cover on it so that it doesn't get erased completely, and some protection. So there is an Ashoka edict there as well. So these edicts were all over the country and people were, okay, what's going on? So when Alexander Cunningham started setting up the Archaeological Society of India, they started cataloging it. And one of the scholars at the Asiatic Society in Calcutta deciphered the Pali, the Brahmi script, Pali language, and the Brahmi script that it was written in. So from then they started understanding what it is, and there the mention was there that this king did this king is saying do this, this king has donated so much, all that stuff they found. So then they realized, oh, and it was also the time our national movement was coming together in the late 19th century, and at that point they needed something which was Indian, which was great. This guy like set up all over. It was found in the Deccan, it was found in the west all the way till Takshila, till the western frontier province. It was found in Patna and all over east. So they said, oh, this was a great king. And then they translated it as Ashoka. And then they found out, okay, then that's how Ashoka was built up. Suddenly about 140, 130 years back. And it became like Ashoka the Great. And that's how people wanted to identify something. So till then, if you go to Victoria Memorial, you see the initial flag that was adopted by the Congress. It was not looking like our flag today, right? And it was a very different flag. There are lots of flags, but even the normal flag that we have will not look fundamentally different than, say, the flag of Italy or Hungary. If you go, it's the same colors, right? It's because of the chakra that we suddenly... So yeah, I think...
Where the Brahmi script is there, Firoz Shah Tughlaq was very fond of these lats or these pillars. He brought it all the way from a place called Tokra or something, or in Haryana.
Somewhere near Meerut.
And then it was an engineering feat to bring that huge this thing without getting cracked and all that in bajras, and then bullock carts specially designed for that. And then it is still there in that Firoz Shah Kotla complex. And Firoz Shah Tughlaq was very fond of deciphering or finding out the truth of these things. So he put along a lot of scholars from all over India, from different religions, to decipher the script. But none was able to do it. Then after 500 years, an employee of the East India Company,
he was a member of the Asiatic Society,
called James Prinsep, जिनके नाम पे प्रिंसेप घाट है. He was one of the founder figures of the. One was William Jones and then James Prinsep. So he was for 500 years it remained undeciphered since the project of Firoz Shah Tughlaq took place. उसके बाद it remained undeciphered. After 500 years, an Englishman was able to decipher. He did many other. He had come as an assay master of the mint in Calcutta. Then he got transferred to Banaras, and then again back. So he did many other things besides. But this was a stunning thing that he did, and because he was an exceptionally intelligent person. God had given him a great brain and all that, analytical brain. But God had given him a very small lifespan. He died at the age of 40 only. Lion capital. It is in that Varanasi
You can see all sorts of Tibetan scripts here on the stone there. There's a lot of slabs there. So it's obviously newer than the park. 30 years after the park was actually set up, they made this area. As you can see, it's quite well maintained, so Buddhism still continues to have support. And this was the Dharma Chakra that Leela was talking about, right? You see the 8 spokes in the chakra on top, and both a male and a female deer listening, and that is Buddha, right? So as I was telling you, in the initial years of Buddhism, Buddha was depicted in symbol form. It was only later on that, we had the Greeks who attacked, right, with Alexander, and you had this whole Bactrian, the Greek empire in the northwest of India, or which is now Pakistan. So actually what is said, a lot of idol creation, statue making technology came with them. If you see before that, right, you go to, like, we've got like hundreds and thousands of Indus Valley civilization sites. There's not a single temple that's been found in it. There have been fire altars being found, like Yajnagraha or whatever you want to call it, but not a single temple. The first Vishnu temple is built in Vidisha by a Greek monarch. And because they had been building temples for hundreds of years in Greek, you know, the temple to Athena and all that. So they've been building those temples there for a long time. So when those people came here, they bought the technology of both. They were very good sculptors. So they have been building those. If you go to Greece and see the statues there, they have excellent statues, and that's why they say that one of the reasons that our statues look very European is not the British, and all these guys came much later. We are talking about 300-400 BC, right? That is when Alexander, his army came. They set up their empire in this part of the world, and it seems that is how their sculpture, the people who came with them had the skills to make these statues, and then they taught the local artisans, and since then we have this huge profusions of statues, temples. You go down south, you have these amazing, beautiful temples, right? And go to Belur, Halibet, absolutely surpassing everything in the world. So it seems that's how technology and skill also came. And then we had temples everywhere, right? So
it was the Greek that gave him the...
especially these statues that were demolished by the Taliban, right? Huge statues which were built in Afghanistan, carved out, Bamiyan statues, which was again before Christ. But they don't look very Indian, like we don't have such long noses and all. A lot of Greek influence there. Bactrian. That I said it's a Bactrian empire, that's what it was called there.
Kind of flowers.
Nectar, which are nectar.
Which is nectar. So very interestingly, neem, sajan, which is drumstick, kari patta, lemon. These are the largest attractor. Tulsi. These are the largest attractor of butterflies because they're tiny flowers which are not flamboyant. They don't look like they can do anything. But you can see that the neem is flowering right now, and they attract more butterflies than any of those small exotic species which we see there. Just outside the toran, there are petunias which are planted. There will not be butterflies on that, or they may be, but very few. But this will be full of butterflies.
Host plants.
Yeah.